Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Sunday here at First Unitarian Society. But it's not just any Sunday, it's Valentine's Sunday. And I am still wearing my Valentine's sweater that I wore in this building Friday night for a fabulous, wonderful, delightful Valentine's jazz soiree. And it was a crowded event. We had at least 1,250 people here. And I arrived at 6:25. The event started at 6. I had to park 4 blocks away and take an Uber to get here. And then I had to tackle somebody to get a coat hanger for the closet because the closet was full. It was a great event and a great way to kick off the Valentine's Day weekend and reflect the Valentine's spirit. So I slept in this. I'm still wearing it in honor of Valentine's Day. So welcome everybody to another Sunday here at First Unitarian Society, where independent thinkers gather in a safe, nurturing environment to explore issues of social, spiritual, and ethical significance as we try to make a difference in this world. Speaking of things in this world that are different, I'm Steve Goldberg, a proud, thoroughly vaccinated member of this congregation. And I'd like to extend an extra special welcome to any guests, visitors, or newcomers. If this is your first time at First Unitarian Society, I think you'll find that it's a special place. And we invite you to join us at our fellowship hour right after the service. And speaking of the service, this is a perfect time to silence those pesky electronic devices. You will not need them for the next hour because you'll be leaning forward or sitting back to enjoy today's service, which I know will touch your heart, stir your spirit, and trigger one or two new thoughts. We're very glad that you're here, and I invite you now to join in a moment of centering silence so we can be fully present with each other this morning.
Committed to respond to the call of a wounded world, we join together this day with loving hearts, hands, and minds, embracing the interconnected web of water, air, and earth. We light a fire of sustaining hope, ever bright with love and justice. May we bring forth this day new wisdom, strength, and courage to create a new world, not of wealth, but of well-being, a world of new peace and abundance for all. As we give thanks for this earth, our shared and singular home, may we dedicate ourselves to its ongoing care, rising to the calls deep within us and all around us. May we respond today and always with courage and with love. I invite you to rise in all the ways we do for our chalice lighting words that are printed in your order of service. We will read them together, as together we say, "We light this chalice, knowing that the land is the real teacher. All we need as students is mindfulness. Paying attention is a form of reciprocity with the living world. Receiving the gifts with open eyes and open heart." I invite you to join together in our in-gathering hymn number 349, "We Gather Together."
Good morning. We gather together in joyful thanksgiving, acclaiming creation who whose bounty we share. Both sorrow and gladness we find now in our living. We sing a hymn of praise to the life that we bear. We gather together to join in the journey, confirming, committing our passage to be a true affirmation in joy and tribulation, when bound to human care and hope, then we are free.
I invite you to turn to one another and offer a friendly greeting. The young and young at heart can come forward. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Were any of you here last time I was here when we had this? You remember this? It's an offering plate. Yes. Today I give thanks for feathers. I offer that to our plate. And what is this? A shell, yes. Yes. And I also have a wonder box that has some wondrous things in it. Do I have a reader here who can read what it says? Can you read that tiny, tiny print? Precious gem. What do you think's inside? Gems, yeah. What do you see? Some rocks. Yeah, crystal rocks. Is this the one you were talking about? Is the crystal rock? Yeah, they are sparkly, some of these are. So I have a book. Oh, so these rocks come from my personal collection. And I have a book. The plate is on the screen, yes, exactly. You are very observant. And I also have a book called Everybody Needs a Rock, because, well, I think everybody needs a rock. Now, you listen to the story and you tell me if you agree. This book says everybody needs a rock. I'm sorry for kids who don't have a rock for a friend. I'm very sorry for the kids who only have tricycles, bicycles, horses, elephants, goldfish, 3-room playhouses, fire engines, wind-up dragons, and things like that. And if they don't have a rock for a friend, that would be very, very sad. That's why I am giving them my own 10 rules for finding a rock. Now, has anyone here found a rock before?
No.
Some people have, some people haven't.
I have rocks in my backyard.
Oh, yes, you have rocks in your backyard. Well, listen to this. This says 10 rules for finding a rock, but not just any rock. I mean a special rock that you find yourself and keep as long as you can, maybe forever. So if somebody says, "What's so special about that rock?" don't tell them, "I don't." Nobody is supposed to know what's special about another person's rock. All right, here we go.
A new rock.
A new rock. So, can you help me count? Rule number 1. If you can, go to a mountain made out of nothing but 100 million small, shiny, beautiful, roundish rocks. But if you can't, any place will do. Even an alley, even a sandy road. Rule number 2. When you are looking at rocks, don't let mothers or fathers or sisters or brothers or even best friends talk to you. You should choose a rock when everything is quiet. Don't let dogs bark at you or bees buzz at you. But if they do, don't worry. The worst thing you can do is go rock hunting when you are worried. Rule number 3. Bend over. More, even more. You may have to sit on the ground with your head almost touching the earth. You have to look a rock right in the eye. Otherwise, don't blame me if you don't find the right rock. Rule number 4. Don't get a rock that is too big. You'll always be sorry. It won't fit in your hand right, and it won't fit in your pocket. A rock as big as an apple is too big. A rock as big as a horse is much too big. Rule number 5. Don't choose a rock that is too small. It will only be too easy to lose, or a mouse might eat it thinking it is a seed. Believe me, that happened to a boy in the state of Arizona. Rule number 6. The rock must be the perfect size. It has to feel easy in your hand when you close your fingers over it. It has to feel jumpy in your pocket when you run. Some people touch a rock 1,000 times a day. There aren't many things that feel as good as a rock if the rock is perfect. Rule number 7. Look for the perfect color. That could be sort of a pinkish gray with bits of silvery shine in it. Some rocks that look brown are really other colors, but you only see them when you squint or when the sun comes in just right. Another way to see the colors is to dip your rock in a clear mountain stream if one is passing by. Or sometimes I just use water from my sink. Rule number 8.
Hey, the plate is still on the screen.
Yeah. This says the shape of the rock is up to you. There's a girl in Alaska who likes only flat rocks. Don't ask me why. I like them lumpy. And this one is kind of both, lumpy and flat. The thing to remember about shapes is this. Any rock looks good with 100 other rocks around it on a hill. But if your rock is going to be special, it should look good all by itself in the bathtub. Rule number 9, always sniff a rock. Rocks have their own smells. Some kids can tell by sniffing whether a rock came from the middle of the earth or from an ocean or from a mountain where wind and sun touched it every day for 1,000,000 years. You'll find out that grown-ups can't tell these things. Too bad for them. They just can't smell as well as kids can. Rule number 10, do not ask anybody to help you choose. I've seen a lizard pick one rock out of a desert full of rocks and go sit there all alone. I've seen a snail pass up 20 rocks and spend all day getting to the one it wanted. You have to make up your own mind. You will know.
The plate is still on.
All right, that's 10 rules. If you think of any more, write them down yourself. I'm going out to play a game that takes just me and one rock to play. I happen to have a rock here in my hand. Do some of you have rock collections? Yeah. There are lots of rocks on there now. Yes, that kind of looks like our plate. So I hope that you find some rocks, and if you're done with your rocks, I hope you take them back to where you found them, because sometimes that happens too. So, can we sing you to your class now? Is that all right? Marvelous. We're going to sing 317 and rise in all the ways that we do to sing our children to the religious education classes.
We are not our own, earth forms us, human leaves on nature's growing vine, fruit of many generations, seeds of life divine. We are not alone, earth names us, past and present, peoples near and far, family and friends and strangers, show us who we are. Therefore let us make thanksgiving, and with justice willing and aware, give to earth and all things living liturgies of care. Let us be a house of welcome, living stone upholding living stone, gladly showing all our neighbors we are not our own.
Please be seated. Two poems today. The first one from Mary Oliver. Do stones feel? Do they love their life? Or does their patience drown out everything else? When I walk on the beach, I gather a few white ones, dark ones, the multiple colors. Don't worry, I say, I'll bring you back. And I do. Is the tree as it rises delighted with its many branches, each one like a poem? Are the clouds glad to unburden their bundles of rain? Most of the world says no, it's not possible. I refuse to think such a conclusion. Too terrible it would be to be wrong. And the second from Alice Walker. We alone can devalue gold by not caring if it falls or rises in the marketplace. Wherever there is gold, there is a chain, you know. And if your chain is gold, so much the worse for you. Feathers, shells, and sea-shaped stones are all as rare. This could be our revolution, to love what is plentiful as much as what is scarce.
Mothering God,
"Why did you do that?" he asked me. My grandfather and I were in my backyard. I was maybe 6 or 7 years old. I'm not sure what we were doing in my backyard and the city, because usually when we wanted to visit my grandparents, we would go to their house in the country. But for some reason, the two of us, the old and the young, we were out back exploring. And at one point during our exploration, we turned over a big log, or maybe it was a big rock. And underneath, in the dark, damp soil, a centipede scampered about. Well, I thought it was a centipede, and it certainly did scamper about, until the tennis shoe of my small but mighty foot came stomping down on it, stopping it dead in its tracks. "Why did you do that?" my grandfather asked me. I could only shrug in response to my grandfather's obvious disapproval. If I had possessed words, I would have said I was scared of the centipede, that I had heard that centipede sting, and that it had scampered in that quick, creepy motion. I had acted out of fear. But my shrug most likely didn't look like fear to my grandfather. I wonder now if it looked like indifference. However he saw it, to my voiceless shrug, my grandfather responded, "That is one of God's creatures too." This interaction with my grandfather was likely one of my first introductions to religious naturalism. Of course, he didn't name it as such. My grandfather identified as a Christian, a United Methodist. So he used the language of his religious cultural context to convey to me his values. Values such as reverence for nature, a respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. As a farmer, my grandfather knew firsthand about nurturing the land and caring for the livestock. There was much about his survival that depended on the natural world, with all of its unpredictability and its precariousness, as well as all of its abundance. If that was one of my first introductions to religious naturalism, then one of my more recent ones happened last year when I was in seminary. I took a class entitled Religious Naturalism. Jerome A. Stone is an author, philosopher, and theologian who has helped to develop the religious movement of religious naturalism. He explains this school of thought by first defining the word naturalism. It refers to a set of beliefs and attitudes that focuses on this world. That means there is no supernatural being, no afterlife, no creator that imparts meaning. Instead, our attention should be focused on the events and processes of this world to provide what degree of explanation and meanings are possible to this life. Adding in the religious part of the term, Stone continues, religious naturalism is the type of naturalism which affirms a set of beliefs and attitudes that there are religious aspects of this world which can be appreciated within a naturalistic framework. There are some events or processes in our experience that elicit responses that can be appropriately called religious. So if that was a lot to follow, I get it. Another way to think of it is like this. Religious naturalism begins with the premise that evolution has taken place over billions of years. Given what we humans know based on scientific methods, all beings have a shared common ancestor, and everyone is related. Despite the false dichotomy of our common language, which usually pits humans against nature, religious naturalism confirms that we humans are a part of nature, not apart from or separate from. Humans, with our music, our art, our science, our history, our humanities, our philosophy, our religions, we are a part of nature. and all of nature can be revered and celebrated. Our experiences in this life can elicit feelings of awe and inspiration. Our experiences in this life can help us make sense of our fears, for indeed, we are related to those centipedes. Religious naturalism leads me to think about our theme of the month, generosity. Specifically, I am drawn to the work of Robin Wall Kimmerer, a mother, scientist, decorated professor, and enrolled member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation. In her New York Times best-selling book entitled Braiding Sweetgrass, she shares indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and the teachings of plants. She's a trained botanist. So many of the stories that she conveys in her book speak to notions of generosity. Here's just a snapshot of her message. We are showered every day with gifts, but they are not meant for us to keep. Their life is in their movement, their inhale and their exhale of our shared breath. Our work and our joy is to pass the gift along and to trust that what we put out into the universe will always come back. A couple of weeks ago, when introducing the theme of generosity, you may have heard me talking about the spiritual practice of stewardship and its three interrelated aspects: receiving, giving, and gratefulness. While that is indeed a helpful framework for me still, in reading Kimmerer, I have found an even easier way to remember her message, and I boiled her work down to the ABCs. So, starting with A is for abundance. Now, I know that not everyone is comfortable with this word or this concept. Sometimes, as people living in the United States and using more than our fair share of the earth's resources, we might feel shame about our abundance, or anger at the economic and political infrastructures that result in the realities of lived injustices and that make inequities unbearable. That's a very good point. And I contend that we cannot be rid of abundance in our lives just by denying it or simply ignoring it. So what do we do with it? We are showered with gifts every day. It begins by noticing the abundance of the earth. Alice Walker reminds us of this in her poem, We Alone. Like gold, feathers, shells, and sea-shaped stones are all as rare. This could be our revolution, to love what is plentiful as much as what is scarce. Love what is plentiful. This could be our revolution. Were we to take up the task, we must love what is plentiful. We must notice the abundance in our lives. We are invited to revere and respect and bring religious perspective to this naturalistic experience. Rocks and pebbles, those were the abundant feathers, shells, and sea-shaped stones of my childhood. Sometimes an abundance in our life can get overlooked and taken for granted. But what if we took the time to acknowledge all that we have? What abundance do you notice around you today, in this moment? Is it the air you are breathing? The stone, the wood, the glass of this beautiful environment? The miracles of life in our midst, the living beings who share this space together. That is abundance. So if A is for abundance, B is for be grateful. Once you notice abundance, the next step is to give thanks, to feel gratitude, to express your appreciation. Once we notice the abundance around us, once we pay attention, it is not hard to be in awe. and to share that thankfulness. How long, for example, did it take for this stone, this rock, to get here? What was its journey? And how cool is that? I'm so grateful to bear witness to this moment. Can we be grateful for the basic necessities of food and water and oxygen that we have received from our environment, usually without us even asking for it? To show what it looks like to be grateful, Kimmerer paints this picture. Our old farm is within the ancestral homelands of the Onondaga Nation, and their reserve lies a few ridges west of my hilltop. There, just like on my side of the ridge, school buses discharge a herd of kids who run even after the bus monitors bark, "Walk!" But at Onondaga, the flag flying outside the entrance is purple and white, depicting the Hiawatha Wampum Belt, the symbol of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, with bright backpacks too big for their little shoulders. Black-haired children run circles around the atrium, through the sun shafts, over the clan symbols etched on the slate floor. Here the week begins and ends, not with the Pledge of Allegiance, but with the Thanksgiving address, a river of words as old as the people themselves, known more accurately in the Onondaga language as the words that come before all else. This ancient order of protocol sets gratitude as the highest priority. All the classes stand together in the atrium, and one grade each week has responsibility for the oratory. Together in a language older than English, they begin the recitation. It is said that the people were instructed to stand and offer these words whenever they were gathered, no matter how many or how few, before anything else was done. In this ritual, their teachers remind them that every day, beginning with where our feet first touch the earth, we send greetings and thanks to all members of the natural world. Kimmerer continues in this vein, sharing the English translation of the Onondaga Thanksgiving address. It goes on for 4.5 pages. And then she writes, "Imagine raising children in a culture in which gratitude is the first priority. Each part of creation is thanked in turn for fulfilling its creator-given duties to the others. It reminds you every day that you have enough, more than enough. Everything needed to sustain life is already here. When we do this every day, it leads us to an outlook of contentment and respect for all creation." Under the umbrella of being grateful, Kimmerer offers an analysis of this contentment and this respect when she writes, "You can't listen to the Thanksgiving address without feeling wealthy. And while expressing gratitude seems innocent enough, it's a revolutionary idea. In a consumer society, contentment is a radical proposition. Recognizing abundance rather than scarcity undermines an economy that thrives by creating unmet desires. Gratitude cultivates an ethic of fullness, but the economy needs emptiness. The Thanksgiving address reminds you that you already have everything you need." Imagine that. Contentment as a revolutionary idea growing out of our efforts to be grateful. So if A is for abundance and B is for be grateful, then C is for reciprocity, or reciprocity. I know it's a little bit of a stretch, but when we notice all that we have in our lives and then express gratitude, our perspective begins to shift. We begin to want to be part of a circle of giving and receiving. As Kimmerer puts it, in a culture of gratitude, everyone knows that gifts will follow the circle of reciprocity, and flow back to you again. This time you give, next time you receive. Both the honor of giving and the humility of receiving are necessary halves of the equation. What does reciprocity look like through the lens of religious naturalism? It looks like breathing. Respiration, Kimmerer writes, is the source of energy that lets us farm and dance and speak. The breath of plants gives life to animals, and the breath of animals gives life to plants. My breath is your breath, and your breath is mine. It's the great poem of give and take, of reciprocity that animates the world. Isn't that a story worth telling? Only when people understand the symbiotic relationships that sustain them can they become people capable of gratitude and reciprocity. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Each person, human or no, is bound to every other in a reciprocal relationship. Just as all beings have a duty to me, I have a duty to them, notes Kimmerer. If an animal gives its life to feed me, I am in turn bound to support its life. If I receive a stream's gift of pure water, then I am responsible for returning a gift in kind. We are all related, all symbiotic, and we are called to participate in this circle of reciprocity. So, those are the ABCs of generosity through a religious naturalism lens. Generously receive the abundance, generously be grateful, generously reciprocate by giving. Through awareness and appreciation, we realize our wealth and can find deep satisfaction in giving. Mary Oliver helps us to imagine that deep satisfaction, which is felt by our kin, the trees and the clouds. She writes, "Is the tree as it rises, delighted with its many branches, each one a poem? Are the clouds glad to unburden their bundles of rain?" Like these trees and these clouds, we are built to be givers and to feel the delight and gladness of such giving. The other week, I was talking with a family about their child who did not want to put his magic penny in the offering plate like all the other kids had. Instead, he wanted to save it. He was going to buy some Legos eventually. I was okay with that, I said. It was his turn to receive, after all. He needs the opportunity to acknowledge abundance and gratitude before he's ready to give in reciprocity with delight and gladness. Giving out of guilt or obligation? That's no kind of giving for me. I prefer to give like the trees and the clouds do, with gladness and delight. We can give for the same reason that we breathe, because it is a part of life. When we stop giving, we stop living. As we lit our chalice this morning, we reminded ourselves that all we need as students is mindfulness. Paying attention is a form of reciprocity with the living world, receiving the gifts with open eyes and open heart. May we be mindful. May we receive the gifts of our lives with openness. May we give the gifts of our lives with gratitude. Blessed be, and amen. The offering is our opportunity to give thanks for the gifts of our lives as a recognition of our deep connections. Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, also known as Blue, is the recipient of 100% of this week's outreach offering. The mission of this national organization is to support the role and visibility of Black folks within Unitarian Universalism. I invite you to give generously with gladness and delight.
So the choir you just applauded, along with the Meeting House Chorus, have been invited to perform later this year at Carnegie Hall. Not bad. So we thank these 39 volunteers who sang for us this morning, because we all know how you get to Carnegie Hall. It's practice, practice, practice. And along with those 39 volunteers, we want to thank other volunteers whose generosity makes it possible every weekend for us to enjoy these services. So thank you to our lay minister, John McGevna, our greeters, Joan Heitman and Claire Box, our ushers, Jim Jager and Karen Jager, who asked me to remind you to please return your hymnals to the book carts in the Commons on your way out. Jean Hills and Lauren Manston preparing the coffee for us. And Karen Rose Gredler, who is staffing the welcome table where you can ask questions and she will offer answers. Also want to direct your attention to a couple announcements that are in the red floors, especially about the Madison Starlings volleyball group. May not have heard much about them before, but they use volleyball as a way of reaching young girls, middle school girls, mentoring them and helping them strengthen the future of their lives. They're sponsoring a spaghetti dinner right here on Saturday, February 22nd, this coming weekend. And you can get more information in the Commons during the fellowship hour. Also, speaking of special groups and special occasions, the Cap Times is sponsoring an evening with Russ Feingold and John Nichols right here on Sunday, February 23, a week from tonight, 7 o'clock in the evening. And you can read about that in the red floors. If you have any questions, ask Paul Fanland. And I have two more announcements, and they involve numbers. One is the number 27, because on the 27th of March, we invite you to gather here with us at our stewardship celebration, Friday evening, March 27, when we'll celebrate our collective abundance. That'll be after the conclusion of the stewardship campaign. You'll hear more about that in the coming weeks. And the second number that I want you to keep in mind is 104, because it's 104 days until Cabaret. One more special announcement from Dorrit Bergen, a member of our Board of Trustees, and she has another event and opportunity to share with you. Dorrit.
Hello. So last week, I spoke with you about the need for First Unitarian Society and Congregation Shirei Shamayim to create a team of 30 people trained and ready to volunteer for shifts if someone comes into sanctuary in our building. There would be an overnight shift where a volunteer would sleep over in the building, much like we used to do with the road home. And then during the day, there would be 3-hour shifts. And what the volunteer would do mostly is sit in the Commons, ready to help our guest if they had a question or needed something. Also, the volunteer would be a witness in the unlikely event that an ICE officer with a valid search warrant would enter the building. Also, the Dane Sanctuary Coalition Steering Committee met since last weekend, and we were told that if the courts decide against DACA recipients, the need for sanctuary might actually increase. So, to build that team, we will be holding 2 training opportunities. You only have to go to one. Either Thursday, February 27th, or Monday, March 16th, 7 p.m. to 8:30 here in Courtyard Rooms A and B. And details on how to register are in the red floors. I will be available after the service to answer any questions you may have. Please consider whether you are able to become part of our team that will stand ready to serve should we be asked. Thank you.
We come now to the cares of the congregation. We join together each week, a community with minds that are open, hearts that are welcoming, and arms that are embracing. We lift up those whose lives are touched by sadness, by illness, by worry, or by loneliness. And we pray they find comfort, hope, and healing strength in this community and the larger community. We celebrate those whose lives are whole and well. May they share their strength with those in need and find warmth and love in the sharing of their spirit. And we take a moment now to silently reflect on our own lives and all those beloved within it who need our thoughts and healing prayers. And to these we add some good news from Dory Lightfoot, who reports that she is recovering well from surgery, and we hope that continues for her. And we also lift up an experience of joy that Lewis recently celebrated his 98th birthday. So we are grateful for that as well. Is it Louis? Yeah. May we remember that we are part of a web of life that makes us one with all humanity and with all of the universe. May we be grateful for the miracle of life that we share and the hope that gives us the power to care, to remember, and to love. And with that, we get to lift our voices in song one last time for closing hymn number 163, For the Earth Forever Turning. Please rise in all the ways that we do.
For the earth forever turning, for the skies for every sea, for our lives, for all we cherish, sing we our joyful song of peace. For the mountains, hills, and pastures in their silent majesty, for the stars, for all the heavens, sing we our joyful song of peace. For the sun, for rain and thunder, for the seasons' harmony, for our lives, for all creation, sing we our joyful praise to thee. For the world we raise our voices, for the home that gives us birth. In our joy we sing to turning home to our hills of earth.
As we prepare to love what is plentiful in our lives and take that love out into the world around us, may we remember, in the words of Reverend Amy Zucker Morgenstern, that when we take fire from our chalice, it does not become less, it becomes more. And so we extinguish our chalice, but we take its light and warmth with us, multiplying their power by all of our lives and sharing it with the world. I invite you to be seated for one last gift of music.